Okay, let's unpack this. We're jumping straight into the core of a deep dive today, and it really challenges one of the biggest myths out there in professional life.
Hmm.
The myth of just innate talent.
Yeah, absolutely.
Our source material is all focused on mindset transformation,
Yeah.
and it kicks off with this, well, really provocative and honestly encouraging statement.
It really does. I mean, the fundamental idea, the whole premise of this roadmap we're looking at, it's built on this. Anyone can become creative. That's huge.
It is huge.
It just immediately reframes creativity. It's not some, gift for a chosen few. It's presented as a repeatable process, something structured, something available to pretty much everyone.
And that's the essential insight we're really chasing today, isn't it?
Yeah.
The source gives us this comprehensive framework for changing how we approach problems, how we execute solutions,
Yeah.
what it calls sui moshi zunbian.
Right, the complete mindset transformation.
Exactly. So we're not just looking at, inspiration here. We're dissecting the engineering behind consistent high-level creativity. It's about the how.
Precisely. And our mission for you, the listener, the learner, is to quickly get a handle on these foundational psychological shifts. The disciplinary frameworks, which the source shortens really powerfully to ZEG, and also the advanced strategic mechanics, stuff like the plus-minus mindset, or plus it.
Okay.
We're going to try and translate some of that jargon, and show you exactly how these pieces fit together, how they turn intention into actual results.
Perfect. Let's get into it. Right, so let's start with the basics, the building blocks. The source lays out these 4 fundamental elements. They're needed for synthesizing creative output.
Yeah.
And it's not like a sequence, step 1, step 2.
Yeah.
It's more like you need all 4 at once.
Yeah. Think of them as like the 4 corner posts holding up a structure. They all need to be there for stability. The first element is pretty straightforward. It's the starting point, the foundation.
Okay.
This is just that crucial step of figuring out your baseline, acknowledging where you are now, what you already know, where you stand before you even try to innovate.
That makes sense.
You can't build, I don't know, a flying buttress if you haven't even secured the wall it's supposed to support.
And that's often the step people skip, isn't it? They jump straight to the big idea without grounding it first.
Exactly. Impatience, maybe?
Could be. So, okay, the second element then moves us more towards the abstract. It requires this general concept of openness, perspective. That sounds like needing broad input.
Yeah, this is where you break out of your echo chamber. Openness means actively seeking out diverse perspectives, maybe integrating knowledge from fields totally adjacent to yours, and crucially, cultivating a high tolerance for ideas that really challenge your own domain expertise.
Challenging assumptions.
Right. If element 1 is know thyself, then element 2 is kind of like know the world around you. Broaden that view.
Okay, now here's where the source introduces a really interesting tension, I think. The third and fourth elements, they seem linked, emphasizing 2 sides of one coin. Structural discipline and practical application. It brings up Z here.
Ah, yes, Z.
Which we're understanding is like a structural framework, organizational discipline. And it links that directly to innovation and, importantly, to tangible real-world results.
Yes, the source is really insistent on this, a brilliant idea that you can't execute reliably. It's basically worthless in this model. You need the foundation, absolutely. Need the openness, for sure.
But
then you absolutely need the zig, that framework, that discipline. It's what contains the innovation, applies it practically. This tells you straight away, high creativity isn't an excuse for being disorganized. Quite the opposite.
So it demands more structure, not less.
It demands the highest level of structure, according to this. It's that structured discipline that turns a cool, novel idea into something stable, something replicable, a product, an outcome,
Okay, so if we accept that discipline is required, that zig is essential, we immediately hit that psychological wall that seems to block so many people. Fear. Risk.
And the source tackles this head-on beautifully, I think. It defines 2 contrasting psychological states related to risk. Let's call them the P states.
T states. Okay. Tell us about the first one.
Well, this is critical because any mindset transformation has to deal with fear, right? The first P state, which the source marks as P, is fundamentally tied to fear. The Chinese character is Pei. This is the avoidance mindset.
Avoidance, like
picture a really high-performing executive, maybe, super smart, but they're completely paralyzed at the thought of launching a new project if it's unproven. Risky.
that paralysis. It's rooted in prioritizing self-protection above all else.
Pretty much. The P mindset inhibits any action that carries a perceived risk of loss, Loss of money, loss of face, loss of internal standing, whatever it is.
So this person gets preoccupied with avoiding mistakes. Lots of analysis maybe, but zero execution.
Exactly. Endless analysis paralysis. If you're operating from this fear-based mindset, you're essentially guaranteeing, well, cyclical mediocrity, maybe.
Ouch, but true.
Think about it. Innovation demands novelty. Novelty inherently carries risk. If your main driver is just avoiding the worst-case scenario, you'll never even attempt the best-case scenario.
Right. You filter out all the high potential options because they look scary.
Yeah. This mindset turns challenges into these huge, insurmountable obstacles. It basically guarantees you'll be reluctant to even start the kind of structured experimentation that Zig demands.
Okay, so that's the trap. What's the transformation? Where do we need to move towards the second P state?
Yes, the second P state marked as P. This one isn't just associated with danger, but with calculated risk. The character here is Zamin.
Calculated risk.
Yeah.
How does the source differentiate that psychologically? It's not just being reckless, right?
Definitely not reckless. It's the difference between, say, seeing a deep river and deciding, nope, too scary, not crossing, that's fair P, versus seeing the river, assessing what you need, maybe a boat, maybe plans for a bridge, and then calculating the risk involved because the opportunity on the other side is vastly better.
Ah, I see. So the P mindset recognizes danger, but sees it as, what, like an unavoidable part of getting to something valuable.
Exactly. It sees risk as inherent, maybe even a non-negotiable component of achieving high rewards.
That shift is actually profound, isn't it? The source isn't saying be careless. It's saying change how you value the risk.
Right. Reframe it.
You stop seeing risk purely as something to avoid at all costs, and you start seeing it as maybe the toll you pay to enter the high reward zone. It moves you from being inhibited P to being enabled.
Yeah, and once you clear that psychological hurdle, once you're willing to engage with calculated risk, the next obvious question is strategic direction. Okay, I'm brave now, but where do I point this newfound bravery?
And the source gives us an answer for that too.
It does. It talks about the two eyes of focus. It emphasizes that really effective transformation. It needs this dual perspective. You can't just look one way.
Okay, two eyes. What's the first eye focused on?
The first eye focuses on leveraging your strengths, your advantages. This is the positive side of the ledger, you could say. Identifying your existing resources, what you're already good at, any proprietary knowledge, unique talents you or your team have.
Right, the stuff we like looking at. It feels good, validates what we already do well.
Exactly. We tend to feel most comfortable looking through that eye. But
There's always a but.
there's always a but. If you only use that eye, you become blind. Blind to potential pitfalls, blind to where you're actually weak. That's why the second eye is absolutely non-optional.
And focuses on.
Weaknesses,
Right.
gaps. This requires, frankly, relentless self-awareness. You have to identify your shortcomings, any deficiencies in your current approach, maybe unmet needs in the market that you haven't cracked yet.
This is the harder one to look through. It requires humility.
It does. And this is where it gets really interesting because the source implies that the best creative leaders, they're masters of integrating these two views. They don't just know their strengths and weaknesses as separate lists.
They use them together. How?
They actively use their strengths to attack their weaknesses.
Okay, give me an example.
Sure. Let's say your weakness is slow project delivery. Things just take too long.
Okay.
But your strength is incredibly deep domain knowledge in that area. The synthesis isn't about ignoring the slowness. It's about leveraging that deep knowledge, your strength, to structure the project using Zig principles so efficiently.
Ah, using the structure.
So efficiently that the necessary steps actually get accelerated. You use your strength to build the bridge over the gap, the weakness.
I like that. Building a bridge over the gap. So the ability to shift between these two eyes, strengths, weaknesses, or even better, to integrate them, that's what transforms creativity from something sporadic into, like, sustained evolution.
That's exactly what the source suggests. You're using the strength strategically to solve the weakness, not just compensate for it.
Okay, so if Section 1 gave us the necessary bravery, shifting from fear to calculated risk and the compass, that dual focus on strengths and weaknesses, Section 2 feels like it provides the actual engine, the operating system.
That's a great analogy.
And that engine seems to be structure, this critical concept of Zig.
Yes, Zig is absolutely core here. It's presented as the concept that links abstract thought, those brilliant ideas, to tangible achievement, real results.
Right. The source explicitly calls Zeg the vital bridge between ideas thoughts and results achievements.
Exactly. And the implication is stark. If you have phenomenal ideas, but you lack that structural framework, that zeg, those ideas just stay abstract. They're cheap, they're abundant, but they don't do anything.
Okay, I think we need to spend some serious time really nailing down what this discipline, the zeg, actually looks like in the real world. Because it's clearly not just one single thing, is it?
No, definitely not.
The source breaks zeg down into various components. It mentions methods, strategy, which it abbreviates as ST, and then a list of other components, V, T, L, and uh, mu.
Right. And this systemic view is why this source material is so potent, I think. It implies ZEG isn't just, be organized. It's a comprehensive management system, an operating standard that touches every single part of the creative process.
So let's try and hypothesize, based on common usage and the context, what these might represent in a structured, results-driven creative environment. Start with ST strategy. That feels like the big picture direction, right?
Absolutely. ST, strategy, dictates what we're applying all this structure to. It ensures that the creative output, however brilliant, actually aligns with the high-level objectives. What are we trying to achieve overall?
Makes sense. Without ST, that could just mean you're efficiently producing the wrong thing.
Yeah.
Very organized, but pointless.
Precisely. ST provides the target. Ziga provides the disciplined way to hit it.
Okay, now let's tackle the more cryptic acronyms. V, T, L, and more.
V.
In structural process contexts, V often stands for volume or velocity.
Speed. Let's go velocity for V. I think that fits perfectly. This measures the speed and the efficiency of the creative output within that defined framework. ZigD. A successful Z needs to not just enable creativity, but enable it efficiently. It has to measure and optimize velocity.
So if the structure itself is too heavy, too bureaucratic, and it actually slows you down.
Then V is low. And the structure itself needs modification. This actually ties into the plus E mindset we'll discuss later, the minuses part, streamlining.
Okay, V is velocity. Next is T. T often relates to time, or sometimes training, given the source emphasizes continuous learning. Maybe training.
I lean heavily towards training for T, or maybe time invested in training and practice. It fits the theme. Creativity, in this view, is a skill. It has to be honed, practiced, continually updated.
Right.
So Z, the structure, must include a mandate for scheduled, structured training, deliberate practice. You can't just rely on old knowledge, especially given the openness element we talked about. The framework has to integrate new input through T.
Okay, that makes sense. Moving on to L. In systems thinking, L often represents loops. Feedback loops, learning cycle.
Learning loops, yes. I think that's exactly it for L, or iteration. This is the crucial feedback mechanism built into the structure. If the creative output misses the mark, if it's poor.
Which will happen in innovation.
Right. Inevitably. The structure, the ZEG, must be able to absorb that failure, analyze it systematically, and iterate quickly. This is where the continuous learning and evolution, I mentioned in the source, gets real. It's the mechanism for that structured practice and iteration. $789.
Yeah.
It closes the loop.
Got it. L is learning loops. And finally, that Greek letter. It's often used in science and math for small values, coefficients, maybe friction, or metrics.
Given the emphasis on results and discipline, I define as measurement or metrics. This is the quantitative bedrock of ZEG. It means every important part of the creative process, from input to output, ideally must be measurable.
Why is that so crucial?
Because it allows you to pinpoint exactly where the friction is, where the inefficiencies lie. ZEG demands rigor. You can't just feel like the structure is working. You need data points, metrics, to confirm if it's actually effective, or where it's breaking down.
Wow. Okay, that's a really powerful translation of Z. It's not just a vague idea of discipline. It's an entire system. It covers strategic targeting, ST, efficiency and speed, V, continuous skill acquisition, T, built-in feedback and iteration, L, and all underpinned by quantitative rigor.
It's comprehensive. And this intense, rigorous focus on results brings us smack into a key psychological transformation the source demands. It's about shifting how you, the learner, evaluate your own effort, moving away from what it calls the input-satisfied state.
Towards the outcome-focused state.
Right.
Let's dive deep into that first state. Input-satisfied, N5VQ99. This sounds like a really comfortable trap, especially for busy people.
Oh, it's maybe the most comfortable trap for busy professionals.
Yeah.
This person, the input-satisfied individual, they derive their primary satisfaction from the effort they put in, the input.
So they feel good because
Because they put in the 12-hour day, or they wrote 500 lines of code, or we had a really intense 3-hour brainstorming meeting. They fundamentally confuse activity with actual productivity.
And the danger there is huge, isn't it? Because if you feel satisfied just by working hard, even if the results are consistently poor,
There's absolutely no psychological pressure to change anything. Why would you? You feel good about your effort, so you don't question the structure. You don't look critically at the outcome.
It leads straight to complacency. You just keep applying the same ineffective system, refusing to see it's not working, because you're judging yourself on input, not output.
You feel like a hard worker, a dedicated employee, maybe, but you're not actually an effective creator in this model. Your effort is disconnected from results.
So the necessary shift, the transformation the source calls for, is towards state 2, outcome-focused, where satisfaction is based only on the result, the outcome. N523QS9, the source calls this AC5, effective result-driven satisfaction.
Yes, your measure of success shifts entirely.
Yeah, doesn't that sound incredibly demanding, potentially demoralizing? If I only get to feel satisfied when I hit the perfect outcome, and innovation often involves missteps, won't I just feel like a failure most of the time? Lead to burnout?
That's a really important question. And this is where the beauty of the Zeek system comes back in. It provides the safety net, if you will.
How so?
The outcome-focused mindset, AC5, isn't really about punishing yourself for failure. It's about demanding that you learn from failure. Because the failure is tied directly to the result, which is what you now care about, the person using the Zeek framework doesn't just feel bad.
They do something else.
They immediately go back to the system. They engage the learning loop L. They look at the metrics. They use the structure to diagnose why the process failed to deliver the desired outcome.
Ah, I see. So the satisfaction isn't derived purely from achieving the final goal, but maybe also from successfully executing the learning loop when the goal isn't met. It's about improving the system.
Exactly. The focus shifts.
Yeah.
If the goal isn't met, the positive feeling comes from successfully diagnosing the problem within the Zeek framework and iterating, not from the failed effort itself, but from the structured response to that failure.
That requires a much more demanding, results-oriented, and ultimately a more honest mindset, doesn't it?
It does. You have to move out of that comfortable illusion of I worked hard and into the rigorous reality of, did we achieve the outcome? If not, why not? And how do we fix the system?
The goal isn't just be busy. The goal is successfully achieve the outcome. And Zig provides the structured way to bridge that gap and, critically, to evaluate failure constructively, not just emotionally. Okay, we've got the psychological readiness, the P states, we've got the dual focus strengths and weaknesses, and we've got the operating system, that comprehensive Zig structure. Now it feels like we're moving to the navigation system, the advanced strategy for actually achieving goals.
That's a perfect way to put it.
This is the strategic operational level. And the source calls it the plus-minus mindset. Plus set.
Right. And the plus and mindset, it's not like a fixed battle plan. Think of it more as a dynamic tool set, a way of constantly managing resources and solving problems in real time.
Why dynamic?
Because it recognizes that in any complex creative work, your resources are never perfect. The environment, the market, it's always shifting. So you can't just set a course and stick to it blindly. You have to continuously apply both addition the plus and subtraction or optimization the minus.
It sounds like dynamic sculpting.
Yeah.
You're adding clay where you need more form, but you're also constantly cutting away the excess that obscures the final shape.
That's a fantastic visual for it. And the source breaks down how you do this sculpting. It details 4 specific mechanisms. These are like the operational commands you use for high-level creativity within this mindset.
Okay, let's get into those 4. What's the first mechanism?
The first one is the pure plus side, expanding scope or leveraging resources. This is the proactive addition phase. It means actively looking for ways to widen your available resources, maybe expand your perspective, or add new skills or capabilities to the team or project.
So in a creative context, maybe a design team realizes their current user data is too limited.
Exactly. So they apply this mechanism, they strategically add ethnographic studies, or maybe they bring in an external expert from a completely unrelated field to shake things up. They're widening the funnel of possibility by adding new inputs into their existing Zug structure.
Okay. Or for a small business.
Maybe a small business sees high growth potential. Expanding scope here might mean not just adding one new marketing channel, but maybe leveraging an existing partnership with the supplier to launch a co-branded product. That drastically expands their market reach almost instantly. It's about maximizing the potential for addition, for growth.
Just adding stuff endlessly leads to chaos, right?
Yeah.
Sprawl, inefficiency.
Precisely. Unmanaged addition is dangerous. That's why the second mechanism is so critical, and it's the powerful minuses step, optimizing or streamlining processes. This is subtraction, but specifically for efficiency.
Ah, cutting the fat. This sounds like a direct challenge to that input satisfied state we talked about.
It absolutely is. If the metrics component of your Zig system reveals, say, 3 steps in your process that eat up 40% of your team's time, but only contribute like 5% to the final measurable outcome,
Then the plus A mindset says,
demands you subtract those steps
yeah,
or radically streamline them. You're ruthlessly looking for the inefficiency, the waste, and cutting it out to improve your velocity.
I can picture a software development team dealing with some old clunky piece of legacy code. It works, kinda, but requires constant maintenance, constant patching.
That maintenance is pure friction. It's an unnecessary process step that needs to be subtracted, maybe by rewriting the code, maybe replacing the module to achieve higher creative velocity. This mechanism is what keeps the Zig structure lean, mean, and reactive, not bloated.
Okay, plus is expand, minus is streamline. What's the third mechanism? This one sounds intriguing. Solving contradictions. Ours is A.
Yes. This is where the strategic brilliance really comes into play, I think, because creative projects, real-world projects, they're inherently full of contradictions, conflicting demands.
It's like what?
Speed versus quality, low cost versus high features, the artist's pure vision versus what the market will actually buy. These tensions are everywhere.
And this mechanism, it doesn't just accept them.
No, it treats the contradiction itself as a kind of resource constraint or a problem that must be actively solved and not just compromised on.
So let's take an example. A design project needs to be extremely low cost, that's a minus its constraint, but also extremely high quality, a plus demand. The typical approach is just find a mediocre middle ground.
Right. A compromise that satisfies no one. But the plus mindset, applying this mechanism, doesn't settle. It forces a radical reframing of the problem. Can we find a solution that delivers both low cost and high quality?
How?
Maybe through a completely different manufacturing method, a novel material, a design innovation that simplifies assembly drastically. It demands innovation specifically at the point of conflict. It's the minus aspect of resolving that internal friction, that contradiction.
That's powerful. It turns obstacles into drivers for innovation.
Exactly. Think about a construction project. Contradiction needs super fast assembly, velocity V, but also requires maximum long-term durability. Solving this contradiction doesn't mean choosing one or the other. It means maybe inventing a new modular component system that achieves both speed and durability.
So this mechanism ensures the Zig structure isn't constantly being torn apart by warring objectives.
Yeah.
It forces integration.
Yes. It actively seeks synthesis out of thesis and antithesis.
Okay, fascinating. And the fourth mechanism?
The fourth one kind of loops back, in a way, to maximizing value from what you have. It's utilizing existing resources advantages, HREU. This is a powerful plus, but it's focused on efficiency, maximizing the use of your current strong points, your existing structure.
So before you rush out to add new things, mechanism one, you should first
Look inward. This mechanism demands it. Are your current structural advantages, your core competencies, being used to their absolute full capacity?
100%.
Probably not in most cases. Right. So if you have, say, world-class expertise in one very specific niche area, this mechanism means finding ways to leverage that same expertise in maybe 2 or 3 new ways, generating more value from the asset you already possess.
It's the difference between always buying new tools versus sharpening, maintaining, and finding clever new uses for the tools you already own.
Precisely. The plus mindset is fundamentally efficient. It integrates addition and subtraction dynamically. It ensures you only add new resources when your existing ones are fully wrung out, fully optimized, and you only subtract processes that are genuinely hindering the desired outcome, not just because simplification sounds good.
And this whole plus-minus strategic layer, this dynamic management, how does it connect to the outside world? The source mentions context environment.
Yes, that's key. The source suggests that true creative effectiveness, built on Zog and guided by Plus, allows you to thrive regardless of external factors, or at least be highly resilient to them.
So if the market tanks, or a competitor launches something unexpected,
you don't just freeze or panic, you immediately apply the 4 mechanisms of Plus. Do we need to add resources like market intelligence? Do we need to subtract inefficient internal processes to free up cash, optimize? Is there a new contradiction to solve, like maintaining quality with reduced budget? How can we double down on our unique existing strengths to weather this storm, utilize?
you're using the mindset to adapt your operating structure. Z to the
Well,
new reality proactively.
exactly. It shifts the locus of control inward. Massively. Instead of just reacting or waiting for conditions to be perfect, you're using this strategic framework to actively manage the messy, suboptimal reality.
That feels like the true hallmark of high-level creative effectiveness. Not avoiding complexity, but dynamically managing it.
And really, we've kind of completed the circle now, haven't we? We started with that bold premise. Anyone can be creative. And what the source delivers isn't just, a hopeful promise. It's a methodology. Comprehensive, rigorous. It integrates the psychological, the structural, and the strategic pieces.
Right. So let's synthesize it for the listener. To really achieve that higher level of creativity, what are the steps, according to this deep dive? First, you've got to transform your psychological relationship with challenge.
Yes, moving away from that paralyzing fear
Yeah.
towards embracing calculated risk.
Yeah.
That unlocks the mental energy you need for experimentation in the first place.
Okay, energy unlocked.
Mm.
Then you need to direct that energy effectively using the dual focus.
Constantly maintaining that clear-eyed view of both your strengths and your weaknesses. That ensures your energy goes towards the highest leverage opportunities and also addresses the critical gaps that could trip you up.
And then that focused energy gets channeled. It needs a conduit.
That's where the discipline structure, the ZEJ framework, comes in. That's the operating system we detailed. Strategy, ST, velocity V, training T, learning loops, L, metrics. That's what translates your abstract intention into measurable, reliable results, getting you into that outcome-focused state, AC5.
And finally, governing this whole system, making the moment-to-moment decisions.
That's the advanced plus-minus mindset. Plus it dictates the dynamic flow of resources. It tells you when to expand your scope, when it's time to optimize and streamline, how to tackle those inevitable contradictions, and where you can squeeze more value out of your current advantages.
So the value really of digging into the source material today, it's that you, the listener, are now equipped with a structured step-by-step method, a way to transition out of that comfortable but ineffective input-satisfied loop.
And into the much more demanding, yes, but ultimately much higher reward results loop, where you're judged and judge yourself by the outcome.
You move from being someone who just wants to be creative or maybe has occasional flashes to someone who is creatively effective, consistently, systematically.
And it demands that outcome-focused evaluation of your own efforts.
Right.
Making sure every hour you log, every bit of effort actually serves the goal, not just the illusion of being productive.
Which brings us to a final provocative thought. Something practical for you to chew on, maybe apply immediately this week. Since the source material really highlights that structure, CG isn't just about control, but it's the foundation that actually enables strategic expansion through that plus-minus mindset. Let's connect those two directly.
Okay, so here's a challenge for you. Identify one area, just one, in your professional life, maybe your personal life, where you currently have a really highly developed structure, a clear Z already in place.
What could that look like?
Could be anything. Maybe a super disciplined workout schedule you never miss, a predictable financial reporting process at work that runs like clockwork, or a really clearly defined step-by-step customer service method you always follow, something reliable.
Okay, find that area of existing high structure, then what?
Now, look closely at that highly structured area and identify just one way you can immediately apply the strategic expansion component, the plus from the plus-minus mindset.
So how can you widen the scope of that existing structure? Or add a needed resource or capability to that reliable framework? This week.
Don't just maintain the structure. Use the discipline you already possess as the solid foundation to strategically expand your possibilities. Push the boundary outwards, leveraging the strength of the existing Z.
That intentional application, using structure not just for control, but as a launchpad for expansion, that really feels like the first concrete step towards the kind of high-level creative transformation this source describes.
It's putting the theory directly into practice. Use your Z to power your pluses.
Fantastic. Thanks for diving deep with us today. We look forward to hearing about the structures you all expand next time.